Hey, good morning. Here's Martin with another episode of the Megacell charger and the Megacell monitor software. And as you can see, today we're doing something completely different. We're not going to talk about the Megacell charger, or maybe a little bit, but we're going to talk about how we are generating the cell packs going forward. We've charged all the batteries, we've tested them, we've rested them. Then eventually we scanned for the fault drop, and we're now good to go to start building the packs. And as you can see, I've got all of these PCBs that need to be filled with batteries. But before we do that, we need to make sure that we're actually ready to do so. Why? Those batteries that we have charged, they're charged up to 4.24 volts. They dropped to 4.2, then we rested them for a couple of weeks, we retested, and then you have a cell that is actually fully charged. Now, when we're working with those PCBs, or when you're doing spot welding or any other mechanism to create your battery packs, working with a fully charged battery is not recommended. When you make a short, it goes extremely fast. And even though if you have a partially discharged or fully discharged cell, you still might be able to create a short, but then the amount of current that rushes through it will drop quite fast. So the possibility of a catastrophic failure is lower. But foremost important is that all the cells have the exact same voltage level. And I've seen many occasions where even I make a mistake just grabbing one of those PCBs, taking my batteries out of the box, and sometimes they weren't charged, sometimes they were charged, added them in, and then eventually I take one of those measurement devices. This is a battery go. I plug it into the BMS side, and I figured out like, oh shit. Can I say that? Yeah. And then I figured out that actually the voltage of various cells are different. So when you do a single battery PCB, it doesn't matter. You plug in your battery go and you see the differences. Now, if you wouldn't do that, if you wouldn't individually measure all your PCBs, then you will see that when you start connecting your balance lead across all the PCBs, that your fuses will eventually be tripped. Now, the fuses are on the back. They're trace fuses. If they blow, you have a serious challenge to get them fixed. I haven't found a proper solution for it. Normally I just chuck away the J.O. Garcia's PCB if the trace fuses are blown. People are saying, yeah, you can do a trace wire. Well, if you've ever tried to solder a trace wire onto this small pad, it's virtually impossible. And that there are through hole elements as well. So I tried feeding them in and then solder them and then break them off. It's a nightmare. It takes an immense amount of time, and then the level of success is depends on your skills to solder. Mine are not that great, so I just chuck them. Meaning, if your cell voltages are wrong, then you can get into a lot of trouble. Now, once we've done testing, you see the software running in the back. You can also have the option to actually do a store charge and set a particular value. So when you do that, the batteries that are low in voltage will be brought up to the store charge voltage. The ones that are too high are discharged to that same level. And it does that in two ways. It first charges the cell to the set point, and then it basically stops charging, and you see that the voltage drops. It's normal. Every charger has the same problem because the internal cell resistance requires higher voltage to charge the cell. So when charging is done, it drops back. Now, with the Megacell charger and the Megacell monitor software, it records the volt drop. It waits for 5 minutes, does a second measurement, and then it knows what the difference in voltage is when that cell actually stops charging. So what happens? It starts a second charge or a second discharge, depending on from which voltage level you came, too low or too high. And it discharges to the store voltage plus or minus the volt drop. So when it's actually done with the store charge and the charge current or the discharge is stopped, the cell will level out on exactly that voltage that you've configured. Now that makes it really nice, because when you start adding those batteries into your PCB and then you start measuring them, you will see that they are within maybe a few hundredths of a millivolt, which is awesome, because then you can connect your balance lead in a safe way without having to be worried that your trace fuses get blown. The same is for when you create a cell pack with spot welding, and when you have a 4.2 volt cell, you have a cell that is let's say 3.2 or 3.4. When you start interconnecting them, there will be a current going between them. This one will drain and the other one will start filling up. And depending on how big the voltage difference is, those currents can be substantial, meaning that your fully charged cell will basically give all the current that it can into the discharged cell. And depending on if they are of the same make model, if they have the same C level for charge and discharge, that might work. But in general, those rush currents are so high that you will damage your cell, so that's not recommended. All right, let's go to the software and I'll show you how that actually works when you have a cell and how you do the store charge. All right, so we've done charging. Sorry, I need to say it right. Store charging. And as you can see, all the cells are basically around the same value of 3.7 volts. So we're now good to go to start build the battery pack. Now, as said, I'm using the JU design. Now, when we are transferring these cells from the charger into the PCB, and we basically measure the voltage, you'll see that the average is within 62 millivolts, which is absolutely fine, and it tells me it's 9% charged, which is also good because we want to keep the charge as low as possible. So this is the first one. Now the next one, we can just keep adding, stacking them on top of each other, bolting them together with the spacers, and eventually we can connect the balancing lead to make sure all is nice and tight. So that's what I do for getting ready for building a pack, making sure my store voltage is on all the cells exactly the same. And now when you start connecting them, you basically have no issues with rush currents because one cell is higher than the other. All right, that's it for this time. So the next episode will be about making the appropriate selection for which battery goes in what slot or in what pack. And for that, we're going to use the repacker functionality, which I will show in the next episode.